The fat controller arrived. "Your parts are worn, Toby, so you must go to the works to be mended." "Can I take Henrietta, sir?" "No. What would the passengers do without her?" Toby saw Percy by the water tower. "Don't worry, Toby," said Percy. "I'll take care of Henrietta until you get back." Soon Toby was out on the main line. He clanked as he trundled along. He's a little engine with small wheels. His tanks don't hold much water. He had come a long way and began to feel thirsty. In the distance was a signal. "Good," he thought. "There's a station ahead. I can have a nice drink and a rest until James has passed." Toby's driver thought so too. Toby was enjoying his drink when the signalman came up. He had never seen Toby before. Toby's driver tried to explain, but the new signalman wouldn't listen. "We must clear the line for James with the express. You'll have to get more water at the next station." Toby clanked sadly away. Hurrying used a lot of water, and his tanks were soon empty. Poor Toby was out of steam and stranded on the main line. "We must warn James," said the fireman. Then he saw Percy and Henrietta. "Please, take me back to the station. It's an emergency." Henrietta hated leaving Toby. "Never mind," said Percy. "You're taking the fireman to warn James. That's a big help." Henrietta felt much better. James was fuming when he heard the news. "I'm going to be late." "My fault," said the signalman. "I didn't understand about Toby." "Now, James," said his driver, "you'll have to push Toby." "What, me? Me? Push Toby and pull my train too?" Grumbling dreadfully, James set off to find Toby. He came up behind Toby and gave him a bump. "Get on, you!" James had to work very hard. When he reached the workstation, he felt exhausted. Some children were on the platform. "Coo," said one. "The express is late and it's got 2 engines. I think James couldn't pull it on his own, so Toby had to help him." "Never mind, James," whispered Toby. "They're only joking." "Ha ha!" said James. It was an important day in the yard. Everyone was busy and excited, making notes and taking photographs. A special visitor had arrived and was now the centre of attention. "Who's that?" whispered Thomas to Duck. "That," said Duck proudly, "is a celebrity." "Oh, good riddance," Gordon grumbled, chattering all night. "Who is he, anyway?" "Duck told you," said Thomas. "He's famous." "As famous as me," huffed Gordon. "Nonsense." "He's famouser than you," replied Thomas. "He went 100 miles an hour before you were thought of." "So he says," snorted Gordon. "But I didn't like his looks. He's got no dome. Never trust domeless engines. They're not respectable. I never boast, but I'd say that 100 miles an hour would be easy for me." Duck took some trucks to Edward's station. "Hello," called Edward. "That famous engine came through this morning. He whistled to me. Wasn't he kind?" "He's the finest engine in the world," replied Duck. Then he told Edward what Gordon had said. "Take no notice," soothed Edward. "He's just jealous. Look, he's coming now." Gordon's wheels pounded the rails. "He did it, I'll do it. He did it, I'll do it." Gordon's train rocketed past and was gone. "He'll knock himself to bits," chuckled Duck. "Steady, Gordon," called his driver. "We aren't running a race." "We are, then," said Gordon, but he said it to himself. Suddenly, Gordon began to feel a little strange. The top of my boiler seems funny, he thought. It feels as if something is loose. I'd better go slower. But it was too late. On the viaduct, they met the wind. It was a teasing wind which blew suddenly in hard puffs. Gordon thought it wanted to push him off the bridge. "No, you don't," he said firmly. But the wind had other ideas. It curled around his boiler, crept under his loose dome, and lifted it off and away into the valley below. Gordon was most uncomfortable. The cold wind was whistling through the hole where his dome should be, and he felt silly without it. At the big station, the trucks laughed at him. Gordon tried to whisk them away, but they crowded round no matter what he did. The vicar says that not all children are able to have holidays by the sea, so he's having a garden party to raise money for a seaside trip. I'm going to be the star attraction, chattered Trevor, giving rides to all the visitors. The vicar is putting up posters all about it. I'd like to help too, sighed Edward, but without my rails I wouldn't be much good at a garden party. The vicar's been so busy he forgot to put up the posters. Now no one will know about the party. But Edward had an idea. "Don't worry," he said. "Everything is going to be all right." Then he explained to his driver. "The vicar can paste his posters on my cab and coaches, so wherever I go, they'll go too." "Well done, Edward," said his driver. "I'm sure the Fat Controller will agree." As indeed he did. Edward steamed happily through the stations, collecting his passengers. "Look," they said, "the vicar is holding a party. We must go to that." Later, Trevor was resting in the orchard shed when Bertie rolled by. "Hello, Trevor. Why are you dozing there like an old stick in the mud?" "I'm not dozing, I'm resting," replied Trevor. Then he told Bertie about the vicar's party. "I'll be there too," boasted Bertie. "I'm not sure people will want to ride on an old traction engine after travelling in a smart red bus like me." The party day arrived. It had rained heavily during the night, and the orchard ground was sodden. "Rain and mud won't spoil my day," said Trevor. "No, indeed," agreed his driver. "We'll stay on the road, then we won't get bogged down." Trevor was soon busy trundling up and down the quiet country lane, carrying lots of laughing children. He was just turning a corner when he heard Bertie. "Hello, old-timer. I'm taking everyone to the party. Edward's idea is really working." Trevor gave Bertie a cheerful whistle and turned back toward the orchard. Then there was trouble. "Help! I'm stuck!" shouted Bertie. His wheels had sunk deep in the orchard mud. Terence the tractor arrived just in time. "I'm the one who has to plough fields," laughed Terence. "We'd better get you out." Using strong ropes, Terence and Trevor pulled Bertie clear of the mud. James bustled in. "What's that, Duck?" he snorted. "Are you afraid of bees? They're only insects after all, so don't let that buzzbox diesel tell you different." "His name is Boko, and he didn't "I wouldn't care," interrupted James. "If hundreds were swarming around, I'd just blow smoke and make them buzz off." "Buzz, buzz, buzz," retorted Duck. The next morning, James arrived at the station to collect his coaches. The passengers were excited and keen to get on board. The platform was crowded, and the porter was in a hurry. "Mind your backs," he shouted. Then there was trouble. The beehive fell and broke open. The station cleared like magic. James heard a familiar buzzing. The bees were too cold to be cross, so they buzzed around the fireman hoping he'd mend their hive, but he didn't understand, nor did his driver. So the bees turned to James. His boiler was nice and warm. Buzz off, hissed James. One bee burnt his foot. Ooh, ah, phew, phew. The bee thought James had burnt him on purpose. So it stung James right back on the nose. Eee! Whistled James. He had had enough. So had his fireman and driver. They didn't notice till too late that they had left all their coaches behind. They tried everything to get rid of the bees. First, they spun on the turntable, to no avail. They tried washing them off, but the bees clung harder to James's warm boiler. Then they tried smoking them off by going through a long tunnel. But still the bees wouldn't go away. It's no good, James, said his driver. We'll just have to go back to the orchard and fetch another hive. James's reply was drowned by the sound of buzzing. The vicar was waiting anxiously for James. When he arrived, the bees swarmed straight into their new home. Come on, James, said his driver. What you need now is a good hose down. Later that evening, James was resting in the shed when the vicar came to see him. Thank you for saving my bees, he said. It's a pity it's not Christmas, then we could call you James the Red-Nosed Engine. Everyone laughed, even James, but instead they decided to call James the Bee's Knees, which means they thought he was more useful than ever. Gusts of wind swirled flakes of snow towards Thomas, then they swooshed round Percy too. Why don't we talk about something else, shivered Percy. Yes, like how silly we look when our funnels turn into icicles. That's not funny. Maybe we'll stop feeling cold if we talk about warm things like sunshine and steam. And firelighters, muttered Thomas. Scarves, continued Percy. Scarves? That's what you need, Percy, a woolly scarf round your funnel. Thomas was only teasing, but Percy thought happily about scarves until the firelighter came. Percy was now working hard. His fire was burning nicely and he had plenty of steam. But he still thought about scarves. He saw them everywhere he went. My funnel's cold, he puffed. I want a scarf. Rubbish, Percy, said Henry. Engines don't wear scarves. Engines with proper funnels do, replied Percy. You've only got a small one. Before Henry could answer, Percy puffed away. Percy was still being cheeky. His driver always shut off steam just outside the station. Percy wanted to surprise the coaches by coming in as quietly as he could. But the porters didn't hear him either. Boxes and bags burst everywhere. Oh! groaned Percy. Sticky streams of jam trickled down Percy's face. A top hat hung on his lamp iron. Worst of all, a pair of trousers coiled lovingly round his funnel. Everyone was very angry. The fat controller seized the top hat. "Mine," he said. "Percy, look at this." "Yes, sir, I am, sir." "My best trousers, too." "Yes, sir. Please, sir." "We must pay the passengers for their spoiled clothes, and my trousers are ruined. I hope this will teach you not to play tricks with the coaches." Percy went off to the yard. He felt very silly. On the way, he met James. "Hello, Percy, so you found a scarf, eh? But legs go in trousers, not funnels." And he puffed away to tell Henry the news. Bad weather's due. My help's always needed. Mind how you go, Percy. Ah, huff, Percy. As long as I've got rails to run on, I can go anywhere in any weather anyhow. Goodbye. He set off for the beach. It was a beautiful day, but Edward was worried. Be careful, he warned. There's a storm coming. A promise is a promise, thought Percy, no matter what the weather. The children had a lovely day, but by tea time, dark clouds loomed ahead. Annie and Clarabel were glad when Percy arrived. He was just in time. Rain streamed down Percy's boiler. Oh, he shivered and thought of his nice dry shed. Percy struggled on past coastal villages and into the countryside. The river was rising fast. I wish I could see, complained Percy, as he battled against the rain. More trouble lay ahead. Oh, hissed Percy, the water is sloshing my fire. Percy's driver and fireman had to find some more firewood. I'll have some of your floorboards, please, said the fireman to the guard. I only swept the floor this morning, grumbled the guard, but he still helped. Soon, Percy's fire was burning well. He felt warm and comfortable again. Then, he saw Harold. Oh dear, thought Percy. Harold's come to laugh at me. Something thudded onto Percy's boiler. Ow! Exclaimed Percy. He needn't throw things. It's a parachute, laughed his driver. Harold's dropping hot drinks for us. Thank you, Harold, whistled Percy. Good to be of service, replied Harold, and he buzzed away. The water lapped Percy's wheels. Percy was losing steam again, but he plunged bravely on. I promised, he panted, I promised. He made one more big effort, and at last, exhausted but triumphant, he brought the train home. Well done, Percy, cheered Thomas. You kept your promise despite everything. Duck enjoyed exploring every curve and corner of the line. Sea breezes swirled his smoke high into the air, and his green paint glistened in the sunlight. This is just like being on holiday, he puffed. Well, you know what they say, laughed his driver. A change is as good as a rest. Soon Duck was busier than ever. The Fat Controller was building a new station at the port, and Duck pushed the trucks wherever they were needed. Bertie looked after Duck's passengers, and the other engines helped too, but the work took a long time. Noise and dust filled the air. Don't worry, whistled Toby, the station's nearly finished. And on time too, said Duck, thankfully. Duck felt his responsibility deeply and talked endlessly about it. You don't understand, Donald, how much the Fat Controller relies on me. Ach, aye, muttered Donald sleepily. I'm Great Western, and I... Quack, quack, quack. What? Ye heard? Quack, quack you go. Sounds like you'd an egg laid. Now wheesht and let an engine sleep. Quack yourself, said Duck indignantly. Later, he spoke to his driver. Donald says I quack as if I'd laid an egg. Quack? Do you? Pondered his fireman. He whispered something to Duck and his driver. They were going to play a joke on Donald and pay him back for teasing Duck. The engines were busy for the rest of the day and nothing more was said. Not even a quack. But when at last Donald was asleep, Duck's driver and fireman popped something into his water tank. Next morning, when Donald stopped for water, he found that he had an unexpected passenger aboard. A small white duckling popped out of his water tank. "Nay, who's behind this?" laughed Donald. The duckling was tame. She shared the fireman's sandwiches and rolled in the tender. The other engines enjoyed teasing Donald about her. Presently, she grew tired of travelling and hopped off at a station, and there she stayed. The station master explained to Thomas's driver that the school bus had broken down and that all the parents would be worried if the children were late. Thomas waited as the children walked down from the bridge. Then he took them to the next station, where Bertie was waiting to take them home. When Thomas finished his journey, he was very late. He was worried that the fat controller might be cross with him. "I warned Thomas," puffed Percy to James. "He's been late one time too many. He'll be in trouble now." But next morning, the fat controller was nowhere to be seen. "Thank goodness," sighed Thomas. Thomas knows every part of his branch line, but just ahead was a stretch where the hot sun had bent the rails on the track. "Careful, Thomas," called his driver, but it was too late. "That's done it," said his driver. "We shan't get any further today." "But what about my passengers?" "Don't worry, they'll be looked after," replied his driver. While workmen repaired the line, Thomas had to shunt trucks in the yard. Bertie came to see him. "I understand you need my help again." "Yes, Bertie," replied Thomas sadly. "I can't run without my rails." Bertie set off to collect Thomas's passengers. "Hello, Bertie," they said. "We are glad you are here." Bertie drove along the road by the railway. He stopped at each station along the line. Sometimes he stopped between stations to let people off closer to their homes. Thomas felt miserable. "I've lost my passengers. They like Bertie better than me." The fat controller arrived. "Your branch line is repaired. I'm going to change your timetable so that you and Bertie can work together more." When Thomas reached the station, there were all his passengers. "Bertie is a very good bus, but we missed our train rides with you," they said. Later, Thomas spoke to Bertie. "Thank you for looking after my passengers." "Oh, that's all right, Thomas. I like to make new friends, but I'm glad to share them with you." "Bertie," said Thomas, "you're a very good friend indeed." Next day, the fat controller arrived. "I would like you to go to the harbour tonight to collect something rather unusual." "What sort of something?" "Wait and see." Percy was moving trucks into a siding. Henry arrived with his goods train. The signalman switched the points and Percy waited on the siding until Henry had steamed by. Then there was trouble. "The points are jammed," called the signalman. "I can't switch them back. The workmen will mend them in the morning. It's too late now." Said Percy's driver. "I'm sorry, Percy, but you will have to stay here for the night." "Where are you going?" asked Percy. "Home for tea," replied the fireman. Percy was speechless. He watched as the other engines went home to the shed. Night-time came, and Percy began to feel very lonely. "Oh dear," he murmured, "it's very dark." Oh, what's that?" It was only an owl, but Percy didn't realise this. "I wish Thomas was here too," he sighed. Thomas was waiting for his mysterious load at the harbour. Suddenly, there it was. "Cinders and ashes," cried Thomas. "It's a dragon." "Don't worry," laughed his driver. "This dragon is made of paper. It's for the carnival tomorrow." Workmen lifted the dragon onto Thomas's low loader and put lights all around it for protection. Then Thomas set off into the misty night. Percy was asleep in his sidings and had no idea that Thomas was approaching him. "Help!" cried Percy. "I'm not going to open my eyes until my driver comes." Next morning, the points were mended and Percy puffed back to the junction. Gordon was just about to leave with the express. "You'll never guess what I saw last night." Gordon was in no mood for puzzles. "I'm a busy engine. I don't have time for your games." "I've seen a huge dragon. It was covered in lights." Gordon snorted. "You've been in the sun too long. Your dome has cracked."